I used to teach Spanish and French, so this has always been a love of mine. We had a director of curriculum, Dan LeClaire, who came aboard shortly before I became an assistant principal. So we used to connect, have conversation that way. The woman that I taught with, Kathy Monroe, she and I had always talked about why is it that kids wait until they're in high school to learn a language? Or why is it that our district does it that way? Wouldn't it be great? So during one conversation a long time ago, we talked about the ability of having language at the elementary school. Before I started at Nipmuc, I worked at Holliston High School. Now Holliston has been known for a number of years for their French immersion program. The first year that I was there was the first year that their first class of immersion students came into the high school. So I had a kind of an idea working with those students of how wonderful it was for them to already be able to be bilingual by the time they reached high school. We determined that we would go with Spanish as opposed to French for a couple of reasons. One, French was already established in the Holliston district, and two, Spanish really was the love of Kathy and me, and it is a language that is clearly going to be a second language in our own country. When you have an immersion program, you want to be able to use that language outside of the classroom wherever you go, on the plane, in the hospital, on the cereal box. Everything is also in Spanish. So we made a presentation to school committee, and they said, okay. They gave us the okay to form a committee to look at the possibility of Spanish immersion in our district. I have to credit Kathy with a lot of the research outside of the district, outside of the state. She made connections with people who have done immersion programs in Minnesota, where German immersion is big, down in Maryland in that area, and out west, mostly by email, little phone conversation, little mailing back and forth of information. We were very, very fortunate to have such great support, not only by school committee, but by our director of curriculum, Dan LeClaire. And he said, why don't you go? Why don't you see some programs in action outside of the state? Because there really wasn't much here. So Kathy and I went on an adventure, and we went down to Maryland, which is really a center for immersion. And we were able to go into the schools down in Maryland. We took a week's trip, went down to Washington, D.C., visited schools there, learned what was positive and some of the drawbacks for an immersion program, came back. So we had a very, very fun evening. Kathy and I did a presentation to as many parents that would like to come just to learn about the program. We did a little Spanish class with them. We talked to them about our research. We talked to them about their fears. That would be, well, if my child is going to learn all of this in a second language, what's going to happen to their verbal skills, their English skills, their reading skills? So it ended up being, you're going to have to take a leap of faith. You are going to have to trust us, because research really proves us out. Research will tell us that those students that study a language from the very beginning and really immerse themselves in that language do not lose anything when it comes to their other skills, their math skills, their language skills. We tried to explain to them that the reason that it's important to start the learning of a language early on, we compared it to a computer. So you can have a software program that you can put into the computer and it'll come up on your screen, or you can have something that's built into that computer that's part of the hardware. Students at the early age, their brains are like a sponge, they're ready, they're not inhibited, they want to learn, and it just comes so much more naturally for them, as opposed to by the time they reach high school, it's more like putting a software program into their computer. You have to learn this, and it also becomes sometimes less conversational and more, you have to just translate all of this. So that evening, we were so excited. I think the fact that we believed so strongly in the program and that we had an audience of parents who were well-educated, willing to take that risk, they came aboard. And that first year, we ended up with having to have a lottery because we had so many parents who said, okay, I'll try this, that we ended up just with a blind lottery. That was the first year. I believe the second year we also had one class, and then from the third year on, we've had 2 classes of kindergartners. Kind of gives you a little bit of an overview of how we got started.